Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. Could the stress hormone cortisol be causing you to gain weight and lose sleep? I'm here with Dr. Jenn Stagg. She is here to talk about cortisol. It is a stress, and it causes stress and inflammation, but like we hear all about it. In fact, on social media, it's saying that too. It's what is cortisol?
Right.
So I guess we should start there. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
So what is cortisol?
Yeah, so cortisol is a hormone that comes from the adrenal glands, and it's what we kind of call our main stress hormone. And even when we have that fight or flight response, like if you get, if you're chronically stressed and worried, that can increase cortisol levels. But if it's just like, that acute sort of stress, if you, had to slam on the brakes and you, like, before you would get in an accident, that surge that you feel is coming from your adrenal glands.
Yeah, so, and our adrenal glands are two little glands in our back?
Yeah, so two little glands that sit right above your kidneys, and then they secrete a number of hormones, one of which is cortisol. And cortisol is that one that is, it's necessary. We need that cortisol. It's just that too much cortisol could potentially be a serious medical problem, but for most people, it's more of a dysfunction, I would say.
Right, okay, so if we have too much cortisol, then we could experience belly fat?
Yes, which is like terrible, right?
Right, no one wants that.
No, and I get a lot of patients that come in and their main concern is belly fat, or, they're getting a little bit older and their weight is like kind of redistributing in a different pattern, and that could be, if it's on your belly, then that's could be cortisol, and you can obviously test for that to see if that's part of the issue.
Well, and I think people don't realize that, because I guess if you're going to your regular doctor, they're probably not going to suggest a cortisol test that often.
Yeah.
But this is what one looks like. And do you recommend getting a cortisol test?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a number of different ways you can do it. This particular kit is a salivary cortisol test, and that's my preferred method for looking at your pattern of cortisol secretion throughout the day. So you're basically, spitting in a little tube 4 times a day.
Okay.
Like specific times a day, and you just have to fill up that little tube, and then we freeze them, send them into the lab, get a great report back that shows your cortisol throughout the day, and it should peak in the day. Little tiny tube like that. So
yeah,
pretty
so
easy to do.
I'm just showing folks little tubes like this. I've actually done this test, and it was recommended, and it was interesting to see, because I did have a lot of symptoms of adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
Which, no surprise, running around in a crazy job and taking care of kids. Like, a lot of us might have this.
Oh, yeah.
But it was really easy to do. You just, little saliva in each of these tubes, and then it comes back, and then you know for sure.
Yes, exactly.
So if you get a problem that says you have high cortisol, what do we do?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we can do about that. So first of all, we could think about lifestyle management. So how are you managing stress, throughout your workday or your just daily living? And techniques that help to lower stress would be yoga, meditation, deep breathing, guided imagery, those sorts of things. And then we don't want to discount sleep, because getting good quality sleep can actually help to lower cortisol levels. On the flip side, if your cortisol is spiking later in the evening or even potentially during the night, that could be disrupting your sleep. But this type of testing is a way to figure that out.
Yeah, I've got friends who have been saying, oh my gosh, I'm waking up 4 hours after I go to bed. And I know women start to go through hormonal changes too in their 40s and 50s. So that could be because you have a cortisol imbalance and it's preventing you from staying asleep?
Yeah, exactly. So this like dysregulated rhythm of cortisol, you should have this like nice circadian rhythm where it's high first thing in the morning, and then it sort of tapers off throughout the day. Your blood sugar levels can stimulate a high level of cortisol. So if you are eating kind of like more processed foods, more high glycemic foods, and it has your glucose spiking during the day, your blood sugar, or even in the evening, if it drops off too much, just a perceived drop, that will signal those adrenal glands to release cortisol. So during the night, that could potentially wake someone up. So they won't necessarily feel hungry, but they're awake And the way to really address that is through regulating their blood sugar throughout the day through good dietary choices.
I know this gets overwhelming for folks, like, oh my gosh, all these hormones and all this, and but there is some low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So sleep, number one,
Right.
prioritizing sleep.
Yeah.
That's something that we could all do a better job of usually. That can help your body start to regulate. The
Yes.
other thing, water.
Simple.
If you
Right.
don't drink enough water, you might have high cortisol.
Yeah, for sure. So chronic dehydration can cause cortisol levels to be higher than they should. So that's a simple thing, and we know like water's going to do a lot of other good things in your body, but it definitely affects adrenal function.
Because essentially your body thinks it's in trouble because
Yeah.
it's dehydrated. Your body thinks it's in trouble because your blood sugar is bad from eating bad food. And so then it starts putting out cortisol because it thinks you're in trouble. And
Right,
it's a
exactly.
fight or flight.
That's exactly right. It's this perceived stress. So emotional stress will be a perceived stress, just like if you were to get injured or have some sort of physical trauma or stress.
So I know people are listening and probably saying, oh my gosh, I can't manage my stress. I mean, there's stress everywhere. We all have stress. So this isn't about getting rid of stress because that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it is about managing it.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so we talked about water, we talked about sleep. You mentioned meditation and all that. A lot of people will say, I don't have time. I love the quote of Gabby Bernstein when I interviewed her, you have to have time to do the only thing that matters. But how much time are you talking about? And
Yeah.
what if you don't like to meditate, what would be some simple things you could do that would lower your cortisol?
Yeah. So for first of all, with meditation, it could be 10 minutes a day. That actually can make a difference, and you can use an app like the Calm app or the Aura app. There's a lot of different apps, and that can make it easier to meditate. Another easy thing to do is to just like do some mild exercise, and exercise is one of those things that when it comes to cortisol is what I would call a double-edged sword. So a decent amount of exercise, mild to moderate exercise, is good for healthy cortisol levels, but really strenuous, excessive exercise is going to spike your cortisol level in the short term. But then people will find when they exercise, it's helping them to better manage stress. So you kind of have to take that into account too.
Yeah, and let's be clear here. You're not saying don't exercise.
No,
When we
no.
say extreme exercise, you're talking about like really lots of cardio, marathon training. I mean,
Yeah.
let's say right now a lot of people who are time strapped are using HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training.
Yeah.
And if you're just sure you're getting intense, but let's say those are usually 30-minute workouts,
Yeah.
would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be totally fine. If you were doing something like that for a couple of hours, then you're going to have a problem.
Okay. So
Yeah.
even like a simple walk after dinner, I know that can help regulate your blood sugar, but that also might help you from having a cortisol spike?
Yeah, so we know like the effects on blood sugar, which is going to help cortisol as we talked about, but also we think about like walks outside or a kind of like a walking meditation, right? Like that counts as something that you're doing to really sort of calm down your nervous system.
So if you're having a really stressful day at the office or even with your kids, just taking that moment and going outside and taking, you know, a 10-minute walk,
Yeah.
that can make a big difference.
It can, yeah.
Listen to a podcast.
Exactly.
Listen to the CURES podcast. Yeah.
But yeah, little things, like whatever that is for you. Maybe for someone else, it's like listening to music that they enjoy. Like they're in the car and they listen to music, and that can help like relieve stress levels. So it's just about finding ways to, you know, kind of meet someone where they are.
Is there a certain age, like do kids have cortisol problems or it's just adults?
Yeah, usually, I mean, if a kid is having cortisol issues, there's probably could be something medically going on. And I should say, you know, that there could be an actual like disease type state where cortisol levels could either be very high or very low. And then that needs further like medical workup. But for most people, this is all related to just like stress. But we don't see a lot of kids that are like having high cortisol levels because they are, you know, they're younger. It's when we get older that, you know, we don't adapt as well. We're not as resilient.
Yeah, okay. So because we know obviously, they'll talk about teens and the mental health crisis, lots of stress with high school or even college,
Yeah.
but those surging cortisol levels don't tend to have the same impact as if when we're in our 30s or 40s.
Yeah,
or,
exactly, because things are just unfortunately breaking down as we
Okay.
age. Like once you're over 35, you're kind of just like, things are getting worse.
Yeah, and you mean that, but like at the same time, the hope is we know so much more now. So
Yeah.
starting out with getting a cortisol test
Yep.
with an integrated practitioner like yourself, you have whole health in Avon and Farmington. So you've got, this needs to be ordered. It's a prescription.
Right.
But generally the insurance would cover it if someone ordered it?
Yeah, so this particular test, when you do the salivary testing with a kit like that, it's not covered by insurance, but it's not like super expensive.
Okay.
You can do blood testing. You just won't see the exact profile throughout the day doing blood testing. That blood test, though, is a good initial screen. So you can do a morning cortisol, and that would be covered by insurance. And we often very routinely order that one as well.
Just to start. And then
Yeah.
if you see a problem, you might do more.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that everyone get one, even for a baseline?
Yeah, I think it's a great addition to any sort of like comprehensive medical workup.
So if you are having these symptoms of high cortisol, how would they manifest?
Yeah, so it can manifest in a number of ways. So for some people, they don't even realize that they're having a problem. But as we mentioned, it could result in more like fat depositing in your midsection. Inflammation is another aspect of elevated cortisol. So you could have actual like pain in areas. You could, even on your blood test, have elevated levels of inflammatory markers. And if you did have that, that would, could be a lot of different things causing that, but you could, it would be great to do a cortisol test to check that. Sometimes you can have dysregulated blood sugar. So those two, as I said, go hand in hand. So if you did have like elevated levels of glucose, there could be a cortisol problem there as well. And that's true of like a diabetic if, they can, they're regularly monitoring their blood sugar levels, and they may not have changed they did not change their diet at all, and they're detecting a higher level of glucose. That actually could be from stress. And they'll often say, when I'm stressed, I see higher levels of glucose, and, I'm eating the same. That's cortisol doing that.
Yeah. And so, I'm throwing out just my own CURES thing, that not only can you listen to Dr. Stagg and this podcast, but there's someone who's has a new book out called The Glucose Goddess, and she's on Instagram, and just like little simple hacks. I don't know if you think, she's a scientist who's done hacks on herself, but the idea that for some blood sugar, right? The first step is, you say, a low glycemic diet. Yeah. I know what that is, but I don't know if a lot of people know. So that would mean not having a lot of sugars in your foods, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So examples.
Right. So you would want to have more of a low, more of a whole grain based diet, whole foods diet. So if you're including grains in your diet, you don't want to have a lot of grains, maybe more like a serving a day, and that needs to be a whole grain. And that's important when it comes to adrenal function, that actually is supportive. There's a lot of B vitamins in whole grains. Now, some people are avoiding grains altogether, and that's okay, but you want to make sure the other foods that you're eating don't have like extra sugar in them, that you're combining healthy fats and proteins, so you're never getting like glycemic refers to how high your blood sugar spikes, basically. Yeah. And so you want to just do the food combining where you're having protein and fat and more sort of like complex or non-starchy carbohydrate together.
So basically, kind of like we've learned as growing up, if you're going to have something sugary, it should be after you have food.
Yeah, and just a little bit.
Just
like
a little bit.
Piece of dark chocolate.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about some of the things you brought for us. Dark chocolate is actually good for our cortisol.
Right, exactly.
Love that.
So that's always good news when we can prescribe chocolate to a patient.
Yeah.
That's always a great add-on.
Yeah.
So you want to keep that chocolate very low in sugar, of course, and there's a lot of different options for dark chocolate that you can get, at the grocery store. You also want to look for that it, like let's say dark chocolate, but you want to look that it says like above 70% cocoa.
Otherwise, it might have a lot of sugar and fillers, and then it might say dark chocolate, but it's not doing what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so you'll see that.
So is it because there's magnesium in chocolate? Is that why it helps?
Well, part of it, because magnesium does support the adrenals, and it does help to lower cortisol, but it's what are called cocoa polyphenols in there, and those are good for our circulation and cardiovascular system, but it's also really good at lowering cortisol, and they're actually clinical results showing that, and it doesn't take much. We're talking like a couple of squares of dark chocolate.
So I love to have dark chocolate and green tea in the afternoon as a little treat, and you're saying that actually is a great thing. Have dark chocolate and green tea. Yeah. You're helping your cortisol.
Yep, and because green tea also has been shown to lower cortisol levels. So that combination together is just like perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some other foods you could eat that would help?
Yeah, so omega-3s, anything rich in omega-3. So then we're talking about fish oil or fish sources. Also, omega-3s can be found in nuts and seeds, so like flax meal. Walnuts are a really good source of omega-3, so including those in your diet. Another interesting source of dietary cortisol control is fermented foods. So like sauerkraut or kimchi. That can help to lower cortisol levels because of the type of probiotic in there. And that probiotic that's in there will increase the level of oxytocin in your brain. And that
love
helps.
hormone?
Yeah, that one. That lovely, relaxing hormone.
So hug your pet and eat kimchi.
Right, whatever you can do to increase the oxytocin level.
Yeah, they say when you have a new baby that the mom really, so you know, whether you're hugging your animal or your kids, or so hugs in general.
Absolutely, that will raise
Get more
oxytocin.
Hugs.
Yeah.
Get more hugs. I see you have some other teas here. Are these just green, or what is Tulsi tea? I've seen that out there.
Yeah, so Tulsi primarily has holy basil in there as an herb, and sometimes you might see that's popular on social media as well. Ashwagandha too, you can sometimes find in tea, and we'll talk about supplements, I'm sure, but those herbs are helpful at lowering cortisol levels, but black tea too. So if you're someone that doesn't necessarily like green tea, black tea can also help to lower cortisol levels.
Now people will say, well, I don't mind green tea by itself. When I'll squeeze a little lemon, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, I just don't like it and I want to put something in it. I'm sure you wouldn't say sugar is the best thing, but if someone wanted to add some honey, would that negate any effects?
No, that would be okay. Or they could use like agave nectar as another good sweetener that has a low glycemic index, so if they need that.
Or like monk fruit sweetener?
Yeah, you could do monk fruit. That would be fine.
Get that on Amazon?
Yeah, you could totally find all of those things. Another thing is that a lot of times green tea will be mixed with other herbs. So instead of a pure green tea, it might be like a mint green tea, or different herbs can help to flavor that green tea.
To flavor it. So you're okay with that when you see the Bigelow and it says lemon or blueberry or whatever?
That's totally fine.
Okay. What about, sometimes they say sweetened with stevia. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, stevia definitely doesn't cause that blood sugar spike.
Okay, so if you really can't do it without the sweetener, there's some natural ways that you're still going to get the effects. And I know there's been a lot of great work, even other naturopaths in the state, like Dr. Peter Diadamo, who's the author of the blood type diet. He talked about how it doesn't matter what genotype you are, green tea really undoes a lot of damage. It can turn down the volume on your bad genes and up the volume on your good genes. So we should all have it, right?
Yes, there's no reason not to have it. I know there's like preference, and if that's the case, maybe black tea. That's what I often recommend then.
If they really can't stand it. I don't mind it, but I guess some people, they also, I learned from going to Harney & Sons, which is also another Connecticut company, they just moved over the border, but you shouldn't put it in too hot of water or steep it too much because that makes it more bitter.
Yeah.
So if you're making it at home, you might just want to ease up on how hot you're making the water and how long you're steeping it, and then it won't be as bitter.
Exactly. So if you're leaving that tea bag in there, and I think for people who have that kind of taste issue with green tea, they just have some variants in their bitter receptors, their bitter taste receptors, where they can often not like a lot of foods because of those bitter components. But you're right, just like a shorter steep on that and not leaving that tea bag in is important to cut the bitter on that.
And just to get technical, so it has something called L-theanine in it, which people will see that in supplements as well, but L-theanine is a natural thing that calms us?
Yeah, it's a natural relaxant, so that's a great thing about tea, and this is often why, yes, tea can have caffeine in there, but it doesn't give you that wiry feeling that coffee can have because it is rich in L-theanine. There's also a really important ingredient in tea, green tea, EGCG, and that's another one of these polyphenols like in chocolate, and those are so important for a huge variety of things. But green tea has even been shown to help, just on its own, correlated with decreasing fat, improving fat loss.
Well, if you see, I know some of that stuff you see at the drugstore you wouldn't recommend taking, but you see fat loss supplements or some of those drinks that people have been buying, they'll say green tea extract.
Right, because there's a lot of science involved with green tea, for sure.
But better just to have the green tea than the crazy drinks with
for sure.
all that. Okay, so you brought some supplements also here. Let me just see here. We've got magnesium, which is, my understanding is, we're pretty much all deficient in this.
Yeah, very much so, because the soils are so depleted in magnesium that we just don't get what we used to get out of our diet. So magnesium is a really important mineral that helps support the adrenal glands.
And this one is Stellar C, or vitamin C and bioflavonoids. Some people are accustomed with vitamin C, but you need to get a special vitamin C?
Yeah, so we really like when you add these bioflavonoids that are naturally found in foods that are rich in vitamin C, it has this more synergistic effect, so it makes the vitamin C work a lot better.
So this company is Designs for Health.
So they're a Connecticut-based company.
They are?
Yeah.
Okay,
they
I
started
knew
up
Vital
in
Nutrients
Suffield.
was here, but I didn't know Designs for Health.
So, yeah.
So you want high-quality supplements. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a whole nother, we've done a lot of CURES on that. A lot of times when you go into the regular stores, they might have a lot of other things in them, right? Fillers
right.
and sugars.
And they may not
and
even
stuff.
contain what they say on the label.
So you're kind of
unfortunately.
wasting your money. So
Yeah.
what's the best way to make sure, you know, for the average person, maybe they're not going to make a doctor's appointment, but they want to start taking this. Like, how do you get a good supplement?
It's so challenging, honestly. It's extremely challenging because even like the New York Attorney General a few years back just went into regular pharmacies and took a bunch of herbal supplements and had them tested. And the vast majority of them did not contain any herbs. They had house plants and rice powder.
Oh my gosh.
So it is very difficult over the counter to know if you're getting a good quality supplement. There are some companies like consumerlabs.com, and you can get a little bit of information there, and that can help you to figure out whether, you know, your supplement is high quality or not, because even what it says on, like a lot of times what it says on the label of like purity tested, it doesn't always mean anything.
So some companies that you like, Designs for Health,
Yeah.
and you might be able to find that online.
Yeah.
Or do you have to have a naturopathic prescription?
No.
So Designs for Health, I know I've done some work with Vital Nutrients. They're also an FDA-approved facility.
Metagenics, biotics, there
pure
are a lot
encapsulations.
Of pure encapsulations, yeah, they're all going to be good quality.
What
and
about if you
can
just,
get
a
those
lot of people get their
on Amazon.
vitamins and they'll think I'm getting good ones because I went to Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Can you just get like a Whole Foods brand, or is that not necessarily the same?
I'm actually not sure how they test their vitamins. I've never looked at like the Whole Foods brand to see what they're doing. So I don't want to obviously don't want to comment on it.
Buyer beware. It's good to get. Now the good thing, let's just talk about, I referred a lot of folks to integrative practitioners like yourself because getting the testing can make you, we can waste a lot of money. I mean, I know I've done this. I bought, oh, look at this, let me buy this supplement, let me buy that. And you don't know if it's working, you don't know if you're taking it right.
Yeah.
And so going to a naturopathic physician or a functional doctor, you're gonna do some tests and then you'll see what you're deficient in so you can be maybe more compliant and more effective.
Right, exactly. So it's all about like personalizing that plan for what really is going to make the biggest impact for that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So best to just, and you can do it, a lot of times it might be if you're seeing your regular primary care, then it can be added on.
Absolutely.
You'll say, ask them for this, ask them that, like a vitamin D level.
Right, like
we should have that.
Yeah, simple test that can be added on. Another simple test is just a cortisol level that you can do in the morning, and that can be done with just like your annual physical sort of lab work, and that's easy thing to do, but it might, if it's not abnormal or high, it doesn't pick up the entire picture, and that's where that salivary testing comes in handy.
So do we stay on these forever, or you end up healing your cortisol and you're okay?
Well, it depends, first of all, on like what you're doing. I think primarily it's learning how to better manage the stress in your life. All of these things like are helpful, they're aids and supports, but ultimately it's trying to figure out how to manage your emotional stress. And some people are very resilient to stress. So you can have like two people exposed to the same sort of situation. This has been studied a lot in traumatic situations, military, big traumas, and they can be exposed to the same situation, and one person is like more resilient, and there are genetics involved in that, and you can actually test genes that tell you whether you're more resilient. And you'll know people in your life who are this way, that they've they've been through a lot and they don't seem to be affected necessarily by it. And then other people are highly affected by stress in their life.
Yeah, so even just asking yourself, are females in general, I think that we're extremely resilient, but are females in general more sensitive to stress?
Yeah, well, I think we just, we try and we do so much in the course of a day that it does tend to be like a more common female problem.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. Picking up kids from school, I think, say you drop off at a practice, and I was joking about this with a dad at a flag football practice, and I'm like, I've got an hour and 10 minutes, should I go to the grocery store? Should I go to this? Should I go to that? Like, what can I get done in this hour?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, yeah, I'll be back. I'm just gonna go to the bar over there. You're like Like I feel like women don't think about that. They're
Yeah.
like, I got how much time to get it? What done?
can I
And
get
like the
done
guy
on
will be
my
like, I got an hour. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna go hang out, call, just chill out. Like,
Yeah, right.
So maybe not everyone, but like we could do a little bit more of
Right,
taking
we could
those
chill
breaks.
out a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
okay.
a big thing to work on.
There's a lot of talk about CBD and CBD oils, and I know you and I have talked about this off camera. That for some people it's great, for some people you haven't noticed a difference. But does CBD oil help cortisol?
Yeah, so I haven't seen anything that shows a relationship where like someone took CBD, and it may be out there of CBD and then this correlation to lower cortisol, but we do know for people who CBD or hemp oil helps to manage like anxiety or your nervous system a little bit better, then you're not like going to have as much emotional stress. And so indirectly, yes, it could potentially lower cortisol for people. Another aspect of it is that it could improve your sleep quality. So some people do really well with a hemp oil or a CBD oil to improve their sleep, and then that's a good thing, right, for lowering your cortisol level.
Now, we're in a state where medical marijuana is prescribed and where it's newly legal, and I'm just wondering for those folks who are thinking, yes, marijuana is good then, it's going to help me lower my stress. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, like historically, right, medical marijuana could be, it was approved for people with PTSD to help like manage severe, anxiety, PTSD. And so then it is calming down their nervous system, but it is a little extreme for the average person, right?
Okay,
that
because you can get some of those calming things with just the CBD.
Just with the hemp oil itself.
That doesn't have the THC.
And it doesn't have to have the THC.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're almost done with our time here, but I want to just see here. We've got a couple other. Okay, so these are some of DHEA. I know women will try and take this to kind of regulate their hormones.
Yeah.
Or, what is this for?
Right. So DHEA is actually another one of the hormones that come from the adrenal glands, and on that sort of salivary cortisol profile, and even from blood testing, you can have your DHEA levels checked. And if your DHEA levels are low, then as long as there are no contraindications for supplementing with DHEA, like someone who has like an hormone-sensitive cancer, for example, you could supplement with DHEA and it actually directly lowers cortisol level. But this is something people shouldn't just do on their own.
You need
like,
to figure
I'm
that
stressed out, let me take some DHEA.
So I take something called Adrenal Assist. People are going to see that out there. Again, we want you to be really careful with the supplements, but sometimes the Adrenal Assist will have those types of adrenal medications. Metagenics probably makes one. They have a lot of that. Ashwagandha, rhodiola. They'll put a bunch of stuff in there, and so those are okay. They work together.
So yeah, exactly. So there are those typical, and we use a lot of those in our practice as well, where we might use single nutrients, but those combinations will tend to have things like the vitamin C, magnesium, B vitamins, and then some of these herbal adaptogens like rhodiola or licorice or something added in.
Okay, so now everything you've known about cortisol, maybe take some of the low-hanging fruit of at least start sleeping more, getting water, and maybe you want to add a supplement, try to clean up your diet. A lot of us think processed foods is just about fat, but it really can affect the whole body, which then again, you could be having a stress hormone that's making you gain weight. So thank you so much for all of the information.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
So if you want to find out more information on the cutting edge of wellness, you can listen to more episodes of Kara's Cures, and you can follow me on social media, which is at Kara Sundlin. I like to share this content there. And shout out your website so people can find you or make an appointment.
Yeah, so our clinic website is wholehealthllc.com, and we're taking new patients in Farmington.
In Farmington, Connecticut. And I know you do a lot by Zoom. So, and also you can follow you on Instagram, which is at Jenn.
Yeah, that's just at Jenn Stagg, 1 N.
Okay, perfect. All right, everyone, have a great day and be well.